Well, I've done a whole bunch of scratching here, and to be honest with you, I'm not thrilled with it. But the canvas is getting so cluttered that I'm just going to wing it. I'm going to mix up some burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue, and lay some lines in and try to make some corrections as I go. This it's going to take a bit of effort, but I might be able to make this look more appealing than it is to me right now. It's okay, don't get me wrong. I don't mind it. I'm not thrilled with it. That's all. So we'll take the brush and we'll simplify it. Hopefully get back to what I had in mind before. With my charcoal, I already started to, no, I didn't like this and I didn't like that, so I wiped this off and wiped that off, and well, now we have just kind of a, looks like the ground around a barnyard where the chickens have just kind of gotten a little carried away. So yeah, let's simplify this a bit. And maybe I can put the type of feeling that I originally intended for it to have. Maybe I can re-imbue it with that, re-imbue the painting with that. Painting, drawing, so far it's just a drawing, obviously. Really cold and windy out today. We're having an outflow from the interior of the province, which leads towards the interior of the country, which of course is always colder, so we're getting a Arctic outflow-ish feel about things. I don't know that I need this line in there. I'm kind of thinking sun and more shade, but you know, maybe I am overcomplicating it. Stop overcomplicating it. Overcomplicate it later, but not now. This canvas is a little toothier than I like, but that's not too bad. Not too bad. That chalk that is a constituent of the gesso is absorbing, to some degree anyway, a fair bit of the terps that I've mixed into my wash-in mixture here. You know, it's funny that chalk, the gesso, it's designed to act as a barrier to protect the cotton canvas, the material itself, from the oil paint, but at the same time, it's laid on thickly enough that the upper, this side of that gesso actually does absorb some of the pigment. So yeah, as you can see, I've decided to do just a stretch of Shoreline. always like that. You know, this is from many visits to various lakes on the prairies, mostly on the Canadian Shield, and in Ontario, Algonquin Park, even other areas. I know somebody mentioned a painting was reminiscent of Lake of the Woods, which is pretty much adjacent to the province of Manitoba. It's in Ontario, but we had friends when I was a child who had a cabin at Lake of the Woods, so we spent some time there too. Really enjoyed it. Good memories. Beautiful, beautiful shorelines. And that's, mostly to me, that was just the structure, the strata of the rock on those shorelines. Whoops. Got my tripod so close to my arm here. I'm trying to juggle between. I don't want the tripod too far that way, because then you get a very angled view of the workings as they're being done. But if I bring you in fairly close like this, then yes, my elbow does hit it now and then. For that, I am eternally sorry. But I'm sure you'll be fine. You know better than to expect high quality from me. High quality videos, anyway. Excuse me. So as you can see, I'm choosing now which lines to paint in, and I'm ignoring many others. And making some small revisions as we go. Really helps to simplify. Really helps to simplify things as we move along. How about a little bit of a bush here? I'm thinking this is foreground. The shore, even this rock is pretty much in the most foreground area. The bank rises quickly here, but not here, and this is a little more distant, more of a distant bank, where we will not see the shoreline. I'd like to put a few autumn colors in here. I'd like this bush to glow. I think I'd even like a little bit of maybe a bush back here as well. So yeah, that's not, that's my next step, but it's far from perfect. It's just the next step. Because this little bush in mind here looks ridiculous for the moment. That's okay, I'm not going to worry about it. these two trunks. Let's make another bit of land in behind there so that those trunks don't show up on the same plane as this one and these two. Let's just help that perspective along a little bit. Okay. And something like that for some background. I get the feeling that's not one trunk with two dark lines because they're thinner trees. I'm just painting them right in dark right away. Okay, mix up a little more of this juice here. Alright, I think we'll indicate something back there. Something like next to it maybe. Yeah, I like that one. That's okay. I like that one. Off at a bit of an angle. This one opposing it slightly. One sort of between them. Maybe a shorty here. Something like that. I'm not painting any branches right now, as you can see. I'm just getting kind of rough now, not worrying about details. I'm just putting in a few lines here and there. Maybe there's a trunk there. Maybe there's another one just right here. Yeah, that's the point at which those trunks, for the most part, disappear. Sorry, I'm mumbling here, I think. Those trunks just kind of disappear under the canopy at that point. But I don't think I want this canopy catching a whole pile of white either. Nor do I want it catching much detail. I'm going to take straight ultramarine blue now. Water it down. Paint thinner it down. Much thinner than the stuff I've just been using. How's that? That'll do. This stuff will be in the shadows. Under the trees. More than likely, I'll allow the odd hint of sky to show through under that canopy. But I'm not going to paint that in now. I'll make that decision as I go with it. Yeah, I'm using a very small brush, but it's not just a rough wash-in because there is so much. Well, there's a fair bit of detail here. I would like to some degree, maintain the integrity of my lines. So I'll stick with this small brush. The brush isn't shot yet. It still has some life in it, so I'm not too worried about doing that. There's a little bit. There's a hint of burnt sienna in what I'm doing right now. Not much, so it's pretty much overwhelmingly blue. It's very dark now. Don't know how it looks through the camera, but to my eye it's very dark. But I can still clearly see the difference between my ultramarine blue burnt sienna mixture and my mostly blue mixture. That's not a problem. A bit of bush, okay. That's a bit of bush, the bit of bush. The bit of butter Betty bought. I have a friend who he used to own an auction mart in the province where I live in Canada, and the Camrose Auction Mart, and he himself is an auctioneer. I remember he was telling me. What reminded me of that? Oh, a bit of blue. One of the chants that he used to have to practice for to become an auctioneer was not a bit of blue. Betty bought a bit of butter. The bit of butter Betty bought was bitter, so Betty bought a bit more butter to make the bitter butter better. And there were a number of other ones as well, but anyway. I think that stuck in my head because I used to say things. I used to repeat that to my kids because, you know, I'm a dad. I want to impress my kids. And then, of course, they would copy it. And they would get a kick out of it. And what's more fun than one of your kids getting a kick out of something? Okay. We're gonna. I've just added a little bit of yellow ochre here. Yeah, that's pretty green, but it's okay. We want fall colors, but we want greens too. I mean, if it's all reds and oranges and yellows, what makes them stand out? You know, if you put some green in there, it helps those other colors to stand out more. And actually, there's probably, looking at it now, I'm thinking there might just end up being more green than more in the direction of the green than reds and yellows and oranges. I'm kind of thinking I'll have these bushes here sort of getting into the reds and oranges a little bit. Well, a little bit. There's nothing little bit about red and orange. They're very, they're pretty in your face colors, so you know what I mean. I hope you know what I mean. So I've just added a little more yellow ochre again. Okay. And let's block that out. trunk. Light's going to be coming from I was going to say it's coming from left to right, but I might change my mind on that. I might break my own rule, or what do they say? Not my rule, but one of those rules that say the first thing you have to decide is which direction your light's coming from. That's really important on portraiture and still lifes and things like that. Landscape you can get away with a lot more. So I don't worry about it too much. And I don't worry about too many rules most of the time. I am off center with my most important elements here, so that's good. I've broken this rule, rule whatever. This is not a third of the way from the bottom of the canvas. It's probably closer to a quarter. Looks like a quarter to me, roughly. So, again, that's just a little bit of intuiting there. Change that green again. Let's add a little more. Let's add a little more burnt sienna to it. Even in the wash in, a little bit of variety. Always helpful. Okay, I'm going with even more burnt sienna. Whoops, that's too much turpentine. How's that? Okay, that's pretty dark. That's good, that's fine. I know, for the shady parts here. Even for the sunny parts, it would be okay, because the higher values will get painted on later. Okay. Okay, well, the white is leaving us. That's a good thing. Why don't I add a little bit of alizarin crimson and a hint of cobalt blue and go more in the direction of purple. It's very dark, but that's okay. It's sort of, it's not in front, it's a little bit in the shade. So I'll make that a little bit purplish. And yeah, the landmass in behind here. I'm going to work my way back to Let me just throw more yellow ochre in it. There's a lot of the ground cover in these places is very thin and dries out very early in the season. Not all of these places, but a lot of them, because that thin layer of debris and the grass and what have you that grows on top of that debris, or within that debris, it's all sitting on rock, you know. And if you have something sitting on rock and you don't get rain for a while, well, it goes golden. It just dies. Well, dies, goes dormant, I guess. Dries out. Whatever wording you want. I'll even do a little bit of that over here too. So you see, it's not as busy anymore. We're getting rid of the white. We're getting rid of the busyness of all those, the scratch marks of the charcoal. It's kind of nice when you go into your painting with an underpainting or wash-in that is fairly simple. It's just easier to deal with. Okay, I'm going to lay in these trunks with, okay, something I don't have on my palette right now. I better put a little bit of raw umber on there, because we're pretty much going to go with raw umber and white. I want those trunks to catch much of the light, especially here. What kind of tree is it? I don't care. We'll figure that out later. Whoops, I think I should have painted blue between those. Yeah, I should have. You know what? I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm not going to give it a second thought. Okay, so we're a little bit more in the direction of brown there. Which, you know, and ultimately these tree trunks will end up being low chroma, high value. Okay, I better give my palette a bit of a wipe here because I used up all of my mixing area. And because, you know, if you have a red bush that has some fairly intense bright red or orange on it, or what have you, I almost always use cad red medium and cobalt blue, or alizarin crimson and cobalt blue as my base, because that way where there is no paint, it'll be, you know, viewed as in the shade. And red in the shade makes purple. Seems to work. Seems to work. So one thing I rarely do when I'm washing in I don't worry too much about approximating my values. I really pay attention mostly to the idea that I want my values to be much lower than the values that are going to be on the final painting. Again, I do that because I can afford to do that because I do not glaze. I don't thin my paints off when I'm doing a final painting. I'm generally using no linseed oil, no stand oil, no poppy seed oil, none of that stuff. I just go with paint straight from the tube. Mixed, of course, but not thinned off at all. I'll add a hint of yellow ochre. Not white, just yellow ochre. So this will, once the washing is dry, you'll see that this is what I'm doing right now is a little warmer than the stuff that's behind it. A little higher temperature paint there because the sun's going to catch it even more strongly, and it's closer to us. All right. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to just lay that brush aside for a moment. I'm going to take this fairly new one and I'm going to wash in these rocks. Before I do that, I should probably finish the lines I was going to put in there. Okay, now I have raw umber on my palette. So instead of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, I'm going to use raw umber and ultramarine blue. Equally dark in line, that's not a problem. So, but I think I better organize this bit that I've got going on here a little more clearly than how it is. But I didn't mind that. I don't mind a bit of a sweep. Okay, that's to remind me that there's a sort of a bit of a face here, and then it comes around and there's a bit of a face here. Not that these rocks are necessarily going to be so clearly flat in their different, not so clearly faceted, rather. And they might end up being that way. I don't know. Those options are always kicking around. I don't know if I take that, turn that into a rock. I don't know. Okay, stop playing. Stop making decisions that I don't have to make right now. That's the idea. Just ignore them. Okay, straight raw umber. Straight raw umber, and actually a hint of ultramarine blue, just a bit. Not much. Excuse me, not much. That's too watered down. I'm going to plan on my light coming from the left. I think that's a good idea for this. Well, darn it, still too watered down. Da-da-da. Okay. Now just straight raw umber. You know, that raw umber, straight raw umber, and the area that I've added a little ultramarine blue to. At the moment, I know that they look very similar, but when they dry, that raw umber will look, it will look almost as though it's dulled out quite a bit, and that's because on a particulate level, the pigment particles of raw umber are very, very porous, and that can give the feeling to the look of the raw umber as though it has sunk into the canvas, or as though it is gone quite flat. But that is revived pretty quickly when you varnish a painting. It's not usually a problem that lasts. The old masters used to mix a very small amount of, damar, or however you pronounce it, however you particularly pronounce it, and turpentine. You could even use poppy seed or linseed oil and a lot of turpentine. Really thin it off just to make a very temporary varnish. The solids in that varnish would be not the turpentine, it would be whatever oil you would add into it. But you'd thin it off so much that within a day or so you wouldn't even know that it was there. The whole purpose of it was to make the entire painting look wet again, so that you could gauge your colors as you revisited that painting day after day. It was just really an aid to keep gauging your colors correctly as you go on. I had that conversation with a fellow painter. Went for lunch with him yesterday, and we chatted some art stuff. So Scott Hebert Art, that's his channel. He does a live stream. He's sort of in the middle of doing a live stream every night now. Paints for about an hour or longer. I'm not exactly sure what the average is, but so anyway, we chatted a little bit about that stuff. Okay, so he's a fellow who paints, he hires models and he paints the human figure, and his technique, he and I do very differently, technique-wise and subject matter-wise and what have you. And that's okay, it's still interesting talking to another painter. Okay, more of that straight raw umber. I don't think I'm going to put any light on anything right now. I'm just going to paint all the rocks. Basically straight raw umber. There is some residue of ultramarine blue in my brush and on my palette right now, but I don't worry about it. Now the water. The water I don't think is going to be rough in this painting. I think we're going to pick up some reflection, most likely just of light, probably not of shape. But we'll play that one by ear, see how it goes. And the water at the moment, really, I'm just going to wash in as a fairly dark green, so we're going to use ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. That's about it. Okay. Mix up another bit of this. I knew all I was going to do was wash in today, so I tried to make a point of not putting on too much paint. I don't have a, is it a pochade box? Is it a pochade box? I don't even know that. I don't, if it's not stuff that I use all the time, I forget pretty quickly. But anyway, it's a box that you can close and helps to keep the oxygen a little bit away from your paints a little bit. I know there are people out there who recommend, and some folks like to put it in the freezer overnight or in the refrigerator. That's fine. You don't want to lay anything directly over top of your paint, so it kind of has to be in a little box that keeps your paint piles away from stuff. Otherwise, you lay plastic on it, it's just going to pick up the paint next time you use it. What I don't like is that when you pull that out of the fridge the next day, you have to allow that paint to acclimatize, because immediately there's going to be a layer of condensation on the paint. So you have to allow the paint to warm up, then you have to allow the condensation to dissipate, so that you're not, when you go into mixing, you're not mixing water and oil, because we both know how well those two mix. And even if you do that, there's something just feels off to me about the paint. And it's almost as though it goes slightly syrupy. Somehow the viscosity changes a little bit. Well, not just the viscosity, the actual texture. It's almost as though it goes from being sort of buttery to more elastic. I do not like that feeling at all with my paints. So I'm just kind of careful about how much I lay on my mixing area, on my palette every day. And if I don't overdo it, then it generally works out pretty good, that I don't have a whole lot of paint left over on my palette. Hate wasting the stuff. It's way too expensive. It's a waste. Now, laying paint on a painting, or laying paint on a canvas in a thick manner, if that's part of your technique, that is not a waste. But if you're kind of careless and a lot of it just ends up in the garbage, then that is a waste. Okay. I'll give my palette a quick wipe now, and we'll square the camera off with the painting, so you can have a more accurate look at what's sitting there right now. Let me just flip this over. Going to drop the painting a little bit so that you have less glare from your view. Well, a bit of debris on there. Actually, there's quite a bit of debris all over the place on this. I'm going to have to... I'll play with that later. Clean it up. In fact, once the washing is dry, that debris comes off of there very easily. Okay, so as you can see, many more changes are coming, but at least now it's not a minefield of chicken scratch. And it's a little more organized than it was. Not as much as it will be, but better than it was. Okay guys, we will talk to you soon.